here we're going to look at completing the square. So just how do I know if I have something that the first two terms I want to make it factor? Well, basically, first thing is to notice I do know a lot of this pattern already. Picture if I take some perfect squares, right, means something times itself, and I FOIL them. Do I notice any kind of pattern? Well, our normal pattern of factoring is that the last term comes from multiplying these two numbers, and this comes from adding these two numbers. So this is no different. It just so happens the two numbers are the same. So if 3 plus 3 goes here, then 3 times 3 goes here. Or in this one, if -2 plus -2 goes here, then -2 times -2 goes here. And here, if this is 1 plus 1, this is 1 times 1. So can we use that pattern to our advantage? A lot of times you'll hear them explain that you take half of the middle term. Well, look why you take half. If I'm saying what plus itself gives me 6, 3 plus 3, or half of 6 will automatically be that answer. So let's take some where we don't know the number and see if we can figure it out. So we want to fill in the blank. Fill in the blank here to make a perfect square. Usually what I like to think first is think of if you were factoring it. It's perfect square, so you have to use the same two numbers. That really narrows down your choices. What would I have to put here so that it adds to 16? Just think when I normally factor, my middle term comes from adding my inside outside. So this would have to be 8 and 8. Well, if this factors to 8 and 8, what number has to go in the blank? Looks like 64 would be the only thing that works. So that's where they're getting that idea of taking half of 16, which is 8, and saying 8 times 8 makes this one. I think it helps to think about the next step that's going to happen before. Let's try another one. So v squared minus 8v plus blank. So let's think. If factors, and I'm supposed to make it a perfect square, so the only two numbers that are the same that add to -8 would be -4 and -4. Right? V times v, first term is v squared, inside outside are -4. -4 add to -8. So then if I'm FOILing this, well, to my last term. Well, if this is -4 plus -4, this is -4 times -4, so 16. Let's try one more. So w squared plus 5w plus blank. So little annoying if I have a not even number, but let's think about this still for a second. What could I multiply by itself, or sorry, add to itself to give me 5? Well, 5 is 2.5 plus 2.5, right? But we probably like fractions more than decimals, so think this is half of 5 and half of 5. Half of 5 is literally just 5 divided by 2, so still 2.5, 2.5. So 2.5 plus 2.5 gives me 5. What number would have to go here? 2.5 times 2.5, so 25 over 4. So you'll end up with fractions if you have an odd middle number. Hopefully, usually you get even ones, but that's how you decide what number would I put there in a perfect world to make this a perfect square.